We think fur is synonymous with warmth, that in the Ice Age it was enough to just throw on the hide of a slain beast. But this is a fatal mistake, a dangerous deception. A real unprocessed hide becomes stiff in the cold, turning into an icy, unbending shell. It restricts movement, fighting you with every step. It doesn't warm you, it kills, letting the icy wind in and moisture straight to the bone. So how did our ancestors turn this deadly burden into high-tech clothing capable of withstanding Arctic frosts? They sparked a true technological revolution, and today we will trace every step of it. To understand the brilliance of their solution, we must first understand their enemy. And this enemy wasn't just the cold, it was an invisible killer with an arsenal of sophisticated methods. Its main weapon is hypothermia. First, your fingers stop obeying you, then the shivering that shakes your whole body suddenly stops, and that is the most dangerous sign. Your thoughts become confused, consciousness slowly fades, and you simply fall asleep forever. But this killer had allies. The wind, a thief that penetrated the smallest gaps and stole precious warmth directly from the skin's surface, turning tolerable cold into unbearable in seconds. And moisture, the traitor within. Any sweat from hard work or melted snow instantly turned fur from a savior into an icy compress that sucked the life out of you. Therefore, the task they faced was incredibly complex. They didn't just need a hide, but a whole system, warm, windproof, water-repellent, and at the same time light enough not to hinder them on a hunt. So where does the creation of the perfect Arctic suit begin? With the choice of the right materials. And ancient hunters were brilliant material scientists. They quickly realized that the hide of a giant mammoth or a cave bear, though impressive, was a terrible choice for clothing. It was incredibly heavy, stiff, and would have turned a swift hunter into a clumsy, slow-moving target. Instead, their primary choice was the reindeer, or caribou. Its secret was a true biological miracle. Every hair in its coat is hollow. This network of tiny air-filled tubes created a layer of insulation so effective it can be compared to a modern down jacket. But they didn't stop there. For the ruff of a hood, nothing was better than wolverine fur because its unique structure prevents frost from forming from your breath. For footwear, they might use the durable hide of a wolf. Each animal had its purpose. This wasn't just clothing, it was a precisely engineered system. But having the perfect material was just the beginning. Next came the process that transformed a raw hide into a technological garment. And it consisted of 4 revolutionary breakthroughs. The first breakthrough was processing. A fresh hide is organic, it rots and stiffens. To turn it into soft leather, they first used stone scrapers for hours, sometimes days, to clean off every millimeter of flesh and fat, as any leftover particle could lead to decay. And then the magic began, brain tanning. The shocking secret to softness was in the skull of the animal itself. Its brain, rich in fats and emulsifiers, was rubbed into the hide to break down the tough protein fibers and make it supple. It was a dirty, grueling task, requiring constant stretching and kneading of the damp hide by the fire so it would dry properly and not harden like stone. The second breakthrough was cutting. Now you have a soft but shapeless piece of leather. To create clothing parts from it, you needed not just knives, but precise tools. These were flint burins, shards of stone as sharp as a scalpel. With their help, an ancient tailor, with only a mental template in mind, would cut complex shapes for sleeves or trousers. They had to understand the material, feel it, cut with the grain, not against it. One wrong move, and the precious resource, which could have taken weeks to acquire, would be irreversibly ruined. The third breakthrough was thread. The pieces of leather needed to be sewn together, and here the animal came to the rescue again. From the long tendons running along a reindeer's spine, they created the perfect threads. They were dried and then meticulously split into the finest, yet incredibly strong fibers. Twisted together, they formed a natural equivalent of nylon, a thread that was stronger than any plant fiber, didn't rot from moisture, and even swelled slightly, making the seam even more airtight. And finally, the fourth and main breakthrough, sewing. At first, hides were simply pierced with an awl and tied with cords, leaving gaps for the cold. But about 25,000 years ago, something incredible happened. The bone needle with an eye appeared. This tiny, polished piece of bone, sometimes no larger than a modern sewing needle, became one of the most important inventions in human history. It allowed not just to connect pieces, but to sew them with a tight, sealed seam that didn't let the wind through. It was the needle that transformed a primitive wrap into a fitted, multi-layered suit capable of trapping warm air and saving lives. So what was the result of all this titanic effort? Not just clothes, it was the first high-tech system for protection against extreme conditions in human history, thought out to the smallest detail. At its core was the principle of layering, which we still use today. The first base layer of clothing was often worn with the fur inside, so it would lie softly against the body and create a warm air cushion. The second, outer layer, conversely, was worn with the fur outside to take the brunt of the wind and snow. The central element was an anorak jacket, pulled on over the head to avoid drafts from a closure. It had a snug-fitting hood that protected the face and neck, but the real breakthrough was trousers tailored to the leg. This simple solution, in our view, gave incredible freedom of movement compared to primitive wraps and helped retain heat in the legs during long treks. The footwear was similar to modern mukluks, multi-layered with fur inside and out and a soft sole. And for insoles, ancient people used dry moss or grass, a brilliant solution that absorbed sweat and added another layer of insulation. And of course, there were mittens to protect the fingers from frostbite. And to make the clothes waterproof, the seams were thoroughly treated with animal fat. It was the world's first equivalent of a membrane fabric created from bone, stone, and intelligence. This tiny bone needle turned out to be more important than any spear. It didn't just allow for survival, it allowed them to go further, beyond the horizon. It was this technology, the art of creating warm and reliable clothing, that became the key that opened the way north for humanity. It allowed our ancestors to survive in the icy steppes of Siberia, where temperatures dropped to unimaginable levels. And then, during the peak of the Ice Age, when the ocean level fell, this same technology gave them the opportunity to make the greatest journey in history, to cross the land bridge where the Bering Strait is today and settle two entirely new continents, North and South America. Without stitched clothing, this feat would have been impossible. So the next time you zip up a modern jacket, remember those nameless geniuses of the Stone Age. Their invention didn't just warm the body, it paved the way for humanity across the entire planet. This legacy, stitched with a thread of sinew, is one we still wear today.